Unit 7 Circles, Preview Video 7.5, Part 1, Circumference and Area. Sit tall. Hold your breath. And birthday candle. Make sure you get a date, time, location here, folks. I would read aloud our new vocabulary words. As I highlight them, read them aloud. Following circles trace the circumference, trace the diameter, all three of them. Now, all three of the circles have the same shape. Obviously, they're circles, but a different size. Same shape, different size. Items which have, or shapes, polygons which have the same shape but a different size are similar. So all circles, by their very definition, are similar. They have the same shape, they're just different sizes. Now, the minute you hear the term similar, you should be thinking of scare. And remember, scare means similar is congruent angles ratios equal. Now, in our previous Unit 4, when we did ratios equal, it was all about the side ratios. Well, there are really no sides here. We're dealing in a circle, but there is a unequal ratio for all of these. There's a very special ratio. So right here, I'd like you to box that word ratio. There is an equal ratio that is common to all circles. And ratio, that very special ratio, happens when you divide the circumference of a circle by the diameter of a circle. And since all circles are similar, this ratio will be equal for all circles, regardless of, not shape, that should say size, regardless of their size. So similar means congruent angles ratios equal. And since we've determined that all circles are similar, we're going to be focusing on what is this equal ratio. And the equal ratio is this. If you take any circumference of any circle, and you divide by its diameter, you're going to get the same ratio for every single circle, and that ratio is what we call a constant, and is what we have labeled the constant pi. You guys know it as 3.14159 blah, 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 blah. The reason why there is a blah, 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 blah is because it is an irrational number. The digits do not repeat and they go on forever. Irrational number. So far, supercomputers have calculated those digits out to almost a 2 millionth place. There are contests for memorizing the digits of what we would call pi. So, the circumference divided by the diameter is going to get you the constant pi. It is important that you understand that pi is a number. Yes, it's a Greek letter, but it stands for a constant 3.14159 blah, blah, blah on forever. So it is a number. Pi is a number. Now, what we use more often than not is we're going to isolate the circumference. So I'm going to multiply both sides by d, like basic algebra here, and we get this. Circumference equals pi times d, or commonly known as circumference equals d pi. Now, in an SAT, we know that the diameter is simply 2 radii. So if you look on the front of an SAT test, they will have this for circumference. Circumference equals 2 pi r. These are equivalent, folks. D pi, 2 pi r. They are equivalent. They're the same thing. Why? Because 2 radii right here is equivalent. However, I will personally never, ever, ever use that as the definition of circumference. I prefer you to use C equals diameter pi. There's a reason why. Because this particular definition of circumference gets mixed up with area very easily. I'd like you to simply shade, this is circumference, trace it, and now I'd like you to shade, please, the area. Shade the whole area. To find the area of a circle, the area is simply pi times the radius squared. Notice the parentheses around the r squared. It's very important you don't mix these two up. So I'd like you to write these two equations. Circumference equals diameter pi, d pi, and area equals pi parentheses r squared. C d pi, I c d pi. C d pi, I c d pi. Apple pie is really, really good. Apple pie is really, really good. C d pi, I c d pi. C d pi, I c d pi. Apple pie is really, really good. Apple pie is really, really good. C d pi, I c d pi. C d pi, I c d pi. Apple pie is really, really good. Apple pie is really, really good. Your mission tonight is to sing this to your family and annoy the daylights out of them. C d pi, circumference equals diameter times pi. Apple, area, pi is really, really good. That's r squared. Apple pie is really, really good. Knowing that, we're going to do a couple problems together, folks. Before we do, folks, you need to find the pi key on your calculator. to make it easy. Okay, the pi key on the calculator. On the TI-30s, the pi key is actually right here. You can see a pi key. So there it is. You push the pi key, ta-da, you'll end up with the decimal, 3.14, blah, blah, blah. It'll fill up the whole screen. On the TI-84, you have to hit the second function and then this button. So you have to hit the section function, then this button, then that will get you the pi key. Now, very important. It says here, we're going to do this together. Given the diameter and or the radius, find the circumference and the area. Express your answer in exact terms. The word exact terms means you leave the pi symbol in there with no decimals. Technically, answers with pi in it are what's called exact. They're far more accurate. Then, in approximate terms, without the pi in decimal form. Let me show you what I mean. I'd like you to write the equation here. C equals D pi. Apple pi is really, really good. There's your two equations. So right here, C equals diameter times pi. Always physically trace everything. So right there, if I want the circumference of this circle, I trace it. It's going to be 18 pi miles. That's the exact terms. You're done. Leave it there. Right here, C equals D pi. So I physically trace my diameter for this one. My radius is 6, which makes my diameter 12. So my circumference here is going to be 12 pi cm. That's my circumference. Come over here. C equals D pi. I physically trace my diameter. My diameter, I'm told, is 10. So my circumference is simply going to be 10 pi inches. This is the exact term for circumference. Area equals pi r squared. So in this case, my radius is 9. 9 squared, I'm going to get 81 pi and miles squared. That's our first one. Our second one right here, our radius is 6. So we're going to end up with 6 squared. We get 36 pi centimeters squared area. Here my radius is 5. So I get 5 squared. I get 25 pi inches squared. This is the exact form of the area. Now, how do you get what's called the approximate form? The exact form is preferred, folks. Keep that in mind. The approximate form looks like this. That first one, 18 pi. So we simply do 18. You can do this on your calculator. Times, I have a pi key here somewhere. Where is it? I should have a pi key. There it is. Pi. Ta-da! Take it to the second decimal. That's 56.55. Approximately, and I really want that approximate because I want you to realize that this is the approximate form. 56.55 miles. Ready? Again, on your calculator, see if you get the same thing. We're going to go 12 times pi. 12 times pi equals 37, that's 0.699, rounding to the second decimal place, that's going to be 37.70. So approximately 37.70. 10 times pi, that's approximately 31.42. Approximately 31.42 inches. These are all the approximations. This one, (81) times pi, you get 254.47. 254.47 miles squared. This one, that's going to be 36 pi. 113.10 centimeters squared, and then 25 pi. (78.54 inches squared, and these are all approximations. We're going to do these 3 problems together. You do 2 problems and we are done. It says right here, if the circumference of a circle, so we trace and we write it out, C equals 18 pi centimeters. What is the area? So step number 1, express your answer. I write what I have, C equals d pi, and I write what I want, area equals pi r squared. So I have C equals, in this case, 18 pi. Since my C's are equal, these are equal. So I have d pi equals 18 pi. The pi's cancel. I just found my diameter. My diameter is 18, which means my radii individually have to be 9. So I come over here, 9 squared, and my area is going to equal 81 pi, check for units, centimeters squared. The area of a circle is 200 pi. So we're given the area this time. Area equals 200 pi meters squared. This time we're trying to find the circumference. Circumference, I don't know. Let's write our area equation. C equals d pi. Since our areas are equal, we can make these equal. Watch very carefully. I have 200 pi equals pi r squared. If I divide both sides by pi, they cancel. So I'm square rooting. I have 100 times 2, which means my radius is going to be 10 root 2. Which means my diameter all the way across is going to be 20 root 2. So my diameter here is going to be 20 root 2 pi meters. Express your answer in exact terms. Guess what? You're done. Ta-da! The circumference of a circle is 37.699 centimeters. What is its area? Area equals pi r squared. Circumference equals d pi. So I have 37.699 equals diameter times pi. To solve, I'm going to divide by pi. So we have 37.699 divided by pi, and we can see with it rounding, that's basically 12. So what did we just find? We just found that the diameter is 12, which means our radius is 6 and 6. 6 squared is 36. My area is going to be 36 pi. And the decimal approximation is 113.10 and centimeters squared. This page you're going to do on your own and then check your work. So right here, the area of the circle, area equals pi r squared. That means 64 pi equals pi r squared. Pi's cancel. Square root the r squared. Our radius is 8. If our radius is 8, our diameter is 16. So c equals d pi. Your circumference here should be 16 pi, check for units, meters. That would be your final answer because I want it in exact terms. Take a look here. The circumference of a circle is 36 pi. C equals d pi, so I have 36 pi equals d pi. Divide by pi both sides. And my diameter, therefore, is 36, which makes both of these 18. Area equals pi r squared. So 18 times 18 is 324. We get area is equal to 324 pi centimeters squared. That is the exact terms.